Welcome to TRN Podcast, episode 157. Today we're looking into the recent launch failure involving Firefly Aerospace's Alpha rocket.
That's right. It was carrying a pretty important payload for Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, their LM-400 technology demonstration satellite. And there was quite a bit of anticipation around this one.
Especially since this was supposed to be the first of, potentially 25 launches Lockheed Martin bought from Firefly?
Exactly. A big deal for both companies. And the satellite itself was key to Lockheed's strategy, that whole show more, tell less idea.
Right, proving out new tech for government and civilian customers.
Yeah.
Showing what it can do.
So let's get into the launch itself. When and where did it happen?
Okay, so the launch, designated FLTA-006, they called the mission, Message in a Booster. Kind of catchy. It lifted off Tuesday, April 29th, 9:37 a.m. Eastern, out of Vandenberg Space Force Base in California.
And initially, things looked pretty good.
Yeah, the first phase seemed nominal. Reports said they achieved target separation velocity.
Okay, target separation velocity. What does that actually mean in simple terms? Why is that specific milestone important?
Well, it's basically the speed the rocket needs to hit, so the upper stage, with the satellite, can cleanly separate from the first stage booster.
Right.
It's a critical moment. It means you're moving on to the next phase of flight, getting towards orbit.
But things didn't stay good for long after that separation.
No, unfortunately not. Pretty soon after stage sep, there was an anomaly, a mishap. It seems the Lightning upper stage engine, specifically the nozzle extension, it was lost.
The nozzle expansion, what does losing that do to the engine's performance?
Oh, it's a big problem. That expansion is, it's crucial for directing the exhaust efficiently and getting maximum thrust, especially out in the vacuum of space.
So less thrust.
Significantly less thrust, yeah. The upper stage actually made it pretty high, about 320 kilometers altitude.
Wow, okay.
But it just didn't have the necessary push, the velocity, to actually achieve orbit.
So what happened to the stage in the satellite then?
Well, the good news, if you can call it that, is they came down safely, splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, north of Antarctica, in a pre-planned area.
Okay, so no danger on the ground.
Right, and apparently tracking cameras even caught visuals of debris falling away from both stages during the flight.
So let's talk about that payload that was lost. The Lockheed Martin LM-400. What exactly was it?
It's described as a low-power version of a mid-sized satellite bus. Pretty versatile thing. It's designed to handle different missions, carry payloads up to around 1,100 kilograms, and operate in various orbits: LEO, MEO, GEO.
And this specific one, the tech demo, what was its job supposed to be?
It was planned as a relatively short mission, about 30 days.
Okay.
And during that time, it was supposed to basically run through a day-in-the-life scenario, all autonomously.
Meeting.
Things like initializing itself after launch, establishing communications, performing some spacecraft maneuvers, and really exercising its reconfigurable software. They call it SmartSat.
And then burn up on re-entry.
Actually, the plan included a controlled deorbit maneuver at the end. Bring it down intentionally.
So this wasn't just about testing the satellite's tech in space.
No, exactly. Lockheed Martin also wanted to use this mission to demonstrate their production pipeline, how efficiently they can build these things at their Gateway Center.
Right, proving the whole process.
And interestingly, the U.S. Space Force was involved too. Their Space System Command's Space Safari office.
Also,
They were apparently using it partly as a training opportunity, but also providing customer feedback during the development, so getting insights early on.
and I read there's already a more powerful version of this LM-400 planned.
Yeah, a high-power variant is in development. And Lockheed Martin actually mentioned they already have a contract for the full LM-400 from a classified customer.
So losing this demonstrator is a setback, but the platform itself is moving forward.
Seems that way. Now, this launch, FLTA-006, it faced quite a few delays before it even got off the ground, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Originally slated for mid-March, I think. What were the official reasons given?
The main one cited was range constraint at Vandenberg.
Okay, range constraint. What's that usually mean in practice? Sounds a bit vague.
It generally means the launch range, so all the tracking equipment, safety personnel, airspace, etc., wasn't available, often because it's booked for other missions.
Like military or intelligence launches.
Exactly. In this case, there were preparations mentioned for National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO, missions. They tend to get priority.
Makes sense. Any other reasons for the holdups?
There was also mention of resource protection concerns, which can relate to things like overflight restrictions for a relatively new rocket like Alpha, making sure its flight path is absolutely clear and safe.
And wasn't there some speculation about the X-37B spaceplane landing?
Yeah, some industry folks pointed that out. The X-37B landed back at Vandenberg on March 7th, and its runway is apparently quite close to Firefly's launch pad SLC-2W.
So maybe that complicated scheduling or ground operations.
It's plausible, yeah. Adds another layer to the coordination needed on a busy military base.
Okay, so delays happen. But looking at Firefly Alpha's history, this failure isn't exactly out of the blue, is it? What's their track record been like?
It's definitely been challenging. I mean, launching rockets is hard, especially for a newer company. Looking back at the previous Alpha launches, by most outside judgments, only the third and fifth flights were considered fully successful.
What went wrong on the others?
A range of things, really. The very first flight failed due to loss of control shortly after liftoff. Another one reached orbit, but a lower altitude than planned. And there was one with an upper stage software issue that prevented payload deployment.
So a bit of a pattern of, let's say, teething problems.
You could put it that way. Consistency has been an issue they're clearly still working on.
So how did Firefly and Lockheed Martin react publicly to this latest setback?
Well, Firefly Aerospace put out a statement. They acknowledged the anomaly, thanked Lockheed Martin for their support, which is pretty standard.
Right.
And they emphasized they're working closely with Lockheed and the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, on the investigation to figure out the root cause.
And Lockheed Martin, they lost their satellite after all.
Their tone was, I'd say, understanding of the risks involved. Chip Eschenfelder from Lockheed basically said that taking risks and moving fast are, well, part of the deal with these kinds of self-funded demonstrations.
Sort of eyes wide open about the possibility of failure.
Yeah. And he highlighted that they still gain valuable knowledge just from building and processing the LM-400 satellite itself, even though it didn't fly as planned.
That echoes some earlier comments, too, I think, from Bob Binken at Lockheed.
Right. He had previously talked about the complexities of launching a new rocket from a military range, and also pointed out that because this was a self-funded demo, it might not get the highest launch priority, all factors playing into the situation.
So it sounds like, while it's disappointing, it wasn't entirely unexpected that bumps might occur.
No, I think both parties probably went into this knowing the risks associated with a newer launch vehicle.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the key points here. Firefly Aerospace launched their Alpha rocket, carrying Lockheed Martin's LM-400 tech demo satellite.
Yep. Liftoff was okay. Stage separation velocity was achieved.
But then an anomaly occurred shortly after, involving the upper stage engine nozzle extension.
Which led to a loss of thrust, meaning the satellite couldn't reach orbit.
Right. Both the upper stage and the payload came down safely in the Pacific.
And now an investigation is underway involving Firefly, Lockheed, and the FAA.
It's definitely a setback, particularly given the planned series of launches, but maybe also highlights the inherent difficulties in this business.
Absolutely. Space is still hard, as they say, especially the launch part.
So thinking about this, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you're trying to innovate quickly, like both Firefly and Lockheed are trying to do here, how do you balance that speed and, risk-taking against the need for reliability, especially when you have commercial partnerships on the line?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How much risk is acceptable in pursuit of faster progress?
Something for us all to think about as we watch the space industry continue to evolve. Thanks for joining us for this discussion.